I'm going to start off with the Windows Profiler and how I set this up for me. Either selecting an existing setup or click and make a new one. Here you can set the path of the game so the profiler can launch it, select an icon, and the title for the profile. Next, go to the Options tab and select Global Profiler Setting. On the top part of this menu, be sure to click on Apply Profile to Games Automatically. This will allow the profiler to use the specific profile and all of its settings for each sim launched. Now go to the Edit tab and select Specific Game Settings. This tab is where you can affect the way the wheel operates. At the top, check the box for Use Special Force Feedback Device Settings. That means the profile we have loaded, and in this case for R factor. The first slider is Overall Effect Strength, which is pretty self-explanatory. I set the slider to 100 in the profiler, and then we'll make adjustments in the sim for the amount of force I want delivered by each mod individually. Next is the Spring Effect Strength. That is basically allowing the Logitech software to do additional behavior, and you don't want it. Turn it to 0. Damper Effect Strength is also allowing Logitech to throw in some effects that you don't want, so likewise turn this one to 0 as well. The next one down is the click box for enabling center spring, and right below that a slider for amount. I can tell you that some sims and some wheels might want that box clicked, but for Logitech controls and running R factor, you want to click the enabling, but move the slider to 0. If you are feeling oscillations in sims, it is often having this setting turned up that is the cause. The next section down is Use Special Steering Wheel Settings. Click this button. This will make these settings for this sim profile only. Next is Report Combined Pedals, which is for joysticks that have a brake and gas on the same axis and they cancel them out. If you have that, then get a new wheel and make sure that you do not click on this button. Below that, you can set degrees of rotation for how far Logitech will allow the wheel to turn. In the case of a G25, that number is anywhere from 40 degrees all the way up to 900. In the case of R factor, I typically use 340 or slightly a larger amount depending on the car I'm driving. For those of you who prefer not to use the Logitech Profiler, all of these changes can be made in Windows Game Controller panel. Click on Properties for the wheel and you can make changes. All the same sliders are there in a slightly different order, but there is a reason that I use the profiler, and it is this. I can set changes for each sim as well as map buttons outside of the sim. R factor's chat still does not exist, so I use TeamSpeak and the sim doesn't control it. So I will map a button on my wheel to do that task. Click on the button that you want to control and select a new command. You can then record the keystroke for that command. Now you just have to remember not to program that button in the game. And when in R factor, there are only a handful of actual force feedback settings. The top one being type of force feedback, and obviously we want a wheel. Then you have force feedback effects. You will use this to determine the amount of effects being transmitted. And lastly is the force feedback strength, which you can put at any level you feel is right for you. And remember, for some reason, to use negative force feedback in R factor. I have no idea why, but in R factor